Ellison Carter, and I'm a PhD student here at the University of Texas at Austin, where I study environmental engineering. I'm working towards the end of my PhD. Before I came here, my undergraduate degrees were not in engineering, and actually my international experience came before I even knew what engineering was. I worked in Costa Rica as a field biologist and really felt compelled to do work that might potentially have an application worldwide, but I didn't really know what that was. So when I came to University of Texas, I started to focus on indoor air quality, and so I wanted to provide just a little idea of what indoor air quality relates to. Many people are familiar with outdoor air being polluted, but indoor air being polluted is probably a more recent field of study. So here I am showing a house. You have some air coming in and some air coming out. Can come in and out from all different areas, of course. Surface reactions are taking place on the surfaces of walls and any furniture and any surface that exists indoors. Reactions are taking place in the indoor environment, in the air. And then you're also getting some deposition of chemicals to surfaces as well as emission of chemicals from surfaces. And so the focus of my work has been on a chemical known as formaldehyde, which many people are familiar with because of the FEMA trailers that were provided to Hurricane Katrina and Rita victims. And so this is the impetus for my work on formaldehyde, where I'm looking at ways to remove formaldehyde from indoor environments. And in particular, my international experience in Costa Rica, while it's not a developing country in the sense of other countries around the world, there are still a lot of substandard housing and substandard environmental quality issues. And so the focus of my work allowed me to work on an issue, formaldehyde exposure, that occurs most frequently in low or substandard housing for the poor and for those who struggle to find affordable housing. But before I get into some of the communities I work with now here in Austin, I wanted to just show you a little bit of the work that I do in the lab. In this box, this magic box, I produce formaldehyde gas, which is harder than it looks. And I run it also through some water so I can get some relative humidity, because you know any indoor environment is not without its relative humidity. And then that air would go through this column. This here is the material that I study. It's a cheap charcoal material that could be made in just about any part of the world. It's used frequently for water filtration as well as air filtration, which was another aspect that intrigued me about this work, is that I'd be working with media that's applicable to water and air and is also considered cheap. And so I work with this material to try and remove formaldehyde, and in this chamber here is where I measure the formaldehyde. The specifics of my work has been a lot of fundamental science, but another part of my work has been working with a group that's interested in interdisciplinary research here at the University of Texas. And in that program, I became exposed to housing policies as well as housing conditions. And currently, while I haven't expanded abroad, I've been trying to become more part of the Austin community, and especially focused on housing for low income and poor families. And so one of the projects that I most recently have started working on is studying indoor air quality in what are called the colonias. And if people are already familiar with them, these are communities that have sprung up along the border of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona primarily. They usually consist of Mexican immigrants who moved there temporarily but have found themselves living there permanently. And the conditions in which they live are houses that are falling apart, wastewater tanks that are overflowing, and indoor air quality that sometimes knocks people out, literally gives them nosebleeds, makes them nauseous, pretty horrendous conditions. And so I've been trying to work with the housing community to address some of the indoor air quality issues. And most of the work I do comes from my knowledge of how to measure formaldehyde. And I point at this chamber, the magic boxes that measure it are actually inside the chamber. And I'll be taking some of the instrumentation and formaldehyde measurement expertise that I have into the homes to find what those concentrations of formaldehyde are, what the exposures are, and then with that information, how we might begin to abate the exposure to formaldehyde through the use of materials such as the one that I'm working with. To the extent that the work I have had the chance to do abroad and the work that I'm doing currently here in Austin, that's an application of my fundamental research, to the extent that that has influenced what I do in the future, I think I've become less inclined to do work abroad and more inclined to do work in whatever community in which I live. If I happen to be living abroad, which I would love to do, I would work in the community that I live there, but I found there to be a lot of very interesting environmental quality issues that Austin communities here face, and seeing that still in my own country has made me want to stay here actually more often, where I don't feel that the same cultural barriers that I have faced when I've worked abroad would hinder the type of work I'd like to do. There are still many environmental quality issues that I could stay in the United States and work on and be very fulfilled.